To Unit 3, Orthographic Representations, and we're going to call them either 2 or 3 view drawings depending on the shape of it. This video is just going to give you a brief overview on what an orthographic representation is, and then a little help setting up your first couple orthographic drawings. We've worked with single view two-dimensional objects in the past, and we've been able to create a single front view of several different shapes, objects. And now we're going to take it a little bit further and create a few more views so that even though we can only look at one of the views at a time, we can put 2 or 3 of them together to have a better idea about what this object would look like in real life and what the sizes and dimensions are. Essentially, we're adding the width and the height to the length measurements that we've got. I guess we've had length and height measurements. Now we're going to add width or depth to our images using that third view. Now, the objects are still going to be represented at 90-degree angles to your eye plane. So when you're looking at any individual side of this, you're always looking in an increment of 90 degrees. I'm looking dead at the front of the object, or I'm looking at it straight on from the top, or I'm looking at it from the end view. Keep in mind that it's your eyes that move around the drawing. It's not the drawing itself that moves. So we're going to need to create those 3 separate views in order to fully understand all of the features of an object. The best way to think about third angle projection, which is the style of viewing that we're going to be using and the way that we draw our objects in the orthographic units, it's important to understand what these views represent. And the best way, or in my mind, the easiest way to understand this is just to take whatever object you plan to draw, and what you're going to do is you're going to coat the outside of the object with paint. Then you put that object inside a glass box and then stamp each side to the relevant side in the box. So for instance, if we look at this picture right here, we've stamped everything that's on the front of this to the front side of the glass. We've stamped everything that you can see on the top of the image to the top side of the glass box, and everything on this right side view or end view is stamped to the end view. And then when you unfold those glass panels, they turn into your 3 views. So you see how in this instance, the top panel has been folded up, the front panel was always there, and the right side panel has folded out to give us these 3 views. For most objects, 3 views is enough for us to have a complete understanding of the measurements and the look and shape of every feature on the object. So it's a very, very popular drawing style for engineering blueprints. And oftentimes what you'll also have up here is sort of a pictorial representation of the object as well. We won't deal with pictorials until future units, so this will just be blank for us right now. But if you were to assemble something, say you had some IKEA furniture or something like that, and they had instructions on how to assemble a couple pieces together, you might see something where it's got orthographic views, so like side, top, end views, and then you'd also have a sort of a more 3-dimensional or pictorial version up here showing you what it looks like, quote unquote, in real life if you're looking at it from an angle. So that's what these drawings are used for, and we have to use a couple new techniques in order for us to make sure that we transfer all of our measurements from front to top and then from top to right side view, and that everything lines up appropriately. So what this looks like at the end, when you've completed it correctly, I'll have to scroll down to a different section. Okay. This is what an orthographic or 3-view drawing would look like. So this right here represents a carrier block. That's the front view. That's the top view, so that's what it looks like from directly over the top. And this is what it looks like if you were standing on the right side of this object looking at it directly from the right. So you got to imagine your eyes are straight over the, are in front of the object here. So staring right at it, 90 degrees. Then you moved your entire body and flipped over the top and looked straight down on it. And then you got yourself back on the ground and you went around the right side of the object and looked at it from this direction to get this view. So if you combine those 3 views together, you have a good understanding of what the object looks like, and you can create the object in real life, or you can create other views such as something like this so that you can see it in more of a pictorial manner. We're going to start out with some relatively easy objects here. And it's most important that you set up your drawings properly for orthographics because there are a few extra steps. So I'm gonna flick over here to First off, I'm going to just show you a little glass box video. It's only 20 seconds or something like that. But just to show you the idea of where you're getting these views from. There's 6 possible orthographic views: front, back, left, right, top, bottom. But we only use 3 of them. So you see it stamped back, it stamps the right side, stamps the left side, stamps up, stamps down. But the 3 that we're going to use are this one: top, front, and right side view. And the reason we only use those 3 is that the top is essentially the same as the bottom, the left is essentially the same as the right, and the front is essentially the same as the back. So we could use all 6, but it's an object can generally be replicated in 3 views, so just to keep it less complicated. There are some lines that you can see in certain orientations or certain views that you can't see in others. So we're going to have to learn a little bit more about what a hidden line is. Now, for instance, if you just we're going to look at this control bearing here. If you just sort of pretend that you're looking at it from any given side, I think you'll grab an idea as to what it would be hidden on a certain view. If you look at this object from the front, you can see this slot right in the middle, so you can see that feature. However, this little part here is blocking off the gap. So if you were just looking at the front of this object and you're only looking at one view, you would probably have no idea that there was a little slot running here and running here. You'd be able to see the big one through the middle, but you wouldn't be able to see the other 2, so it doesn't give you a very accurate representation. Additionally, if you were looking at the top of this object, if you were looking straight down on it, you could see lines that indicate this gap. You could see lines, and you can see this gap and this gap. So you can see all 3 gaps from the top view if you're looking at this from dead overhead, but you might not know how far down this gap goes. You can see the lines that delineate it, but you wouldn't necessarily know how deep that gap is. If you're looking at it from the right side, so if you went around the object over here and you're looking at it sort of like an end view here, you would see this gap. You would not see this gap. You wouldn't know that it's there unless there was some indication that it was there. So you notice that you can see certain things on certain sides, but if you put all 3 of those views together, you can see everything. And what we're going to use to indicate features that we can't see on any given side is something called the hidden line. It's just a dashed line indicating that there is some sort of gap or feature there, but you can't see it on this particular view. So they just include a dashed line to indicate it's something that's there, but it's not something that you can see in whatever view you're looking at right now. Okay, so let's focus on the 3-view drawing, 3-view orthographic drawing of this control bearing, and then hopefully you can move on to things with a few more angles and curves. At its root, by the way, the word orthographic, it just means 90-degree angles. It basically means to throw something at a 90-degree angle. That's where the ortho comes from. Whenever you see ortho, it's going to be like 90-degree angles. And the 90-degree angles just refer to where your eyes are when you're looking at the object. They're always perpendicular to the face of the object. So if this is the front of the object, and you usually take the long end as the front, you wouldn't call the front to be this. I mean, it kind of looks like the front, the way the object is laid out here, but our front view is always going to be the most detailed view of the object, or the object that gives you the best idea as to the general shape of it, and it's almost always going to be the longest side. So this would be our front view. Okay, our top view would be straight down, and this would be our end view or our right side view. Okay, so ortho just means 90 degrees. So when we're drawing orthographic drawings, it's going to be a front, a top, a back, a left, and right. It's not going to be on an angle like these ones are. And we'll do those types of drawings later. This is called an isometric representation. We've got to Unit 7 for us. So let's start by setting up our drawing for orthographics. So the very first thing that we have to do when we're setting our drawings up for orthographics is have something called a, so let's get to the page here. We have to have something that's called a miter line. And we haven't seen that yet in our experience. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up our starting template. So I'm going to go to my templates, my starting template, and I'm instantly going to save it as control bearing in the appropriate folder. So save as control bearing. should go in the orthographic drawings section. Save. Double check, make sure it's saving as control bearing. Great, now I'm going to work. There have been orthographic lines on your drawings. You just haven't seen them because I included in the starting template something called ortho, and then I locked it and I hid it, so you weren't able to adjust it. So I'm going to unlock it now, and I'm going to unhide it. And what you'll see is these gray lines indicate where we're going to start our views. So our top view is going to be up here, our bottom view is going to be down here, and our front view, or end view, or right side view is going to be here, not front view actually. This is always the front view. So front, top, and this one's either called the end view or the right side view. I usually refer to it as the right side view. And then we've got this little 45-degree line here, and I'm going to explain what those are as we build this object. So when we are building, this was just for demonstration, when we are building an orthographic drawing, we always start with the construction L. So we've got these two lines here that give us a starting point in the lower left-hand portion of our drawing sheet. So that's going to be our lower right or lower left corner of the object when we draw the front view. So let's go back and look at our object. All right, so clearly this is going to be my front view. It's the longest, which means that point that I made in the L is right there. Now I can start offsetting lines, and you're going to want to use X lines when you're offsetting lines for these type of drawings because you'll find that they help in other views. And you'll see when I transfer from the front view to the top view, you'll see how I can use some of these lines to help me out. So I'm just going to replicate the front of this object using the information I have. I know that the object has a length of 44 from this vertical line to this gap, and then another 40, and then another 44. So I'm just going to use these three numbers here to get me started on my front view and my offsets. So I'm going to, first off, just to make this a little bit more visible, I'm going to go to properties and change those from ortho to con 2, and they're yellow, so that should be easier to see. I need to offset this line, O, 44, so I'm offsetting it there, and then I need to offset 40 and then 44 again. Okay, so let's offset the new line. And that's this line going this way. And then I need to offset that line another 44. So offset 44, this line going this way. So now I've got 3 new lines that are going to help me with the front of this object. Okay, so I need to start in this lower corner, and I need to know how tall is the object. So I'm just looking at the height of the object, and it's given over here. It's 41.5, and then the gap part that's cut out is down 20. So I need a horizontal line that's 41.5 up from the bottom, and then I got to go 20 down from that. So let's start with 41.5 offset 41.5 from the bottom up. And then I'm also going to go from the top down, offset 20, because that's the height of the gap. So I don't have a whole lot of lines for my drawing. It's not getting too cluttered yet, but I may consider changing the lines of certain features or changing the colors of certain features later. I'm going to go to my object line because whenever I am confident that I have created an object line or a view of an object, I just want to get that mapped out. Otherwise, you can kind of get lost in all your construction lines. So I know it goes to there. I know it goes up to here. I know it goes to there. I know it goes down to the gap now, over, up, and over, and then one down to join up. Final feature, if I hide my construction lines just for a second here, that's what I've drawn so far, which is what you would see if you're looking at this object from the front with your eyes here heading in that direction. Now, I know there's a hidden feature in here somewhere, but I'm not 100% sure where it is yet. So maybe I shouldn't draw that in, or I can draw that in right now and then use that line up top when I'm doing my top view. So either way, you can either draw the top view and include this gap, or you can kind of plan for it ahead of time in the front and draw it. It is clearly from the bottom of the object all the way to the top, this little slot here, and it is inset 10 from the very outer reaches of my drawing. Okay, so I know that there's going to be a line that's vertical, that's hidden, that's 10 units from both the left and the right. So for me to do this, probably the easiest way for me to do it is going to be to copy or offset the line and then change the color. So I'm on my object layer. I'm going to select this line. I'm going to offset that line 010 this way. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm just going to select it and I'm going to bring it in 10. So those two new lines represent this slot, how deep this slot is. But you cannot see that slot from the front. So if you can't see it, but you know it's there, it needs to be represented with a hidden line. A hidden line in drafting is just a dashed line. I actually have a hidden layer here that I put as a specific color. And if you notice in the properties, the line, where is it here? Plot style, nope, it should be fine. Line weight is fine. Line type, there it is, that's what I was looking for. The line type, I'm going to turn it to hidden, okay, or hidden times 2, hidden x2. And we'll just have a look at the scale of that, and perhaps we'll have to change that in the future. We can always change that later. But a hidden line is by default a dashed line. So if I go back into my layers, and now I want to draw the official representation of that line, I can just trace over top of it when I'm on the HID layer. So if I go to there, trace down to there, and then I do it again over on the other side, from here to here, and then I can just go delete those white lines. So I'm gonna lock my hidden lines, and then I'm just gonna select the line and get rid of the white one. So because that's locked, because the hidden layer is locked, it's not grabbing my hidden line right now. All right, now I'll zoom in and just see if my dashes are appropriate. You can see it's a dashed line. I might want a bit more of a dash on there, but that's going to have more to do with line type scaling, which we're going to do a little bit later. And I don't know if I can change it on the fly. Yeah, I can. Okay, so I bumped this up to 3 for line type scale, and you notice my dashes are a lot bigger now. So I think I'm pretty happy with that. I should do that with this one as well. I should change the line type to scale factor to 3. Just makes it 3 times, each dash 3 times as long. So this would be the full finished front version of my orthographic. Everything you can see in white, and then anything that we know is there but hidden is in those blue lines. Now that's just one of our 3 views. So let's see how we can use what we have so far to help us with the other views. So these yellow lines are the ones that we have so far to help us draw the front view, but it can also help us draw both the top view and the end view. We just need a couple more steps. When you separate your 3 views, there needs to be a gap. You can't draw them touching each other. There's got to be a bit of a gap for the person reading. And you can estimate that gap, but just make sure it's the same on the top as it is on the right side. Otherwise, you'll run into some problems with your measurements and lines. So if this is the top of my object, and I know this is about 20, 20 is a pretty good distance to space it. So I would select the top line. I would go offset. I would offset at 20, and I would offset it upward. And then I would do the same thing with this line here and offset it the same 20 units. Okay, so this is the very right side. And I've got 2 new lines. I've got this line, and I've got this line, both of which are only there to help us with a gap between our views. The first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to change those to a different layer. I'm going to change those to Con 5, okay, which is I'm going to go to the properties and change that to Con 5. So both of those lines are now going to be represented in dark blue. So the reason I did that is because our new objects are going to start on the blue line, not on the yellow line, because we want to have this little gap in here, okay, just to keep our views separate and give us a little bit more space for writing down measurements or dimensions or things like that. So now we want to use this to draw the top view. Typically, I draw the front view, top view, and then save the end view for last. If you feel like doing it in a different order, that's fine. Just make sure that you're careful about your construction lines because they can help you in other views. As you notice right now, I have some construction lines that go up through the top view, and those can be helpful for me because I don't have to remeasure or re-offset to take care of this particular gap. I also have the endpoints of the object, so I don't need to worry about that. The only thing I need to worry about is how far is it from the front of this object to the back. So that's like the depth reading, right? And I haven't used that measurement yet. That measurement is 50. So if I'm looking at the object from the top, I need an offset of 50 from this line, which is the front of the object, to this, which is the back. Remember, I'm looking at it from the top view right now. I already have enough that I can sketch out the outside of the object. So if I go back to my layers, my object layer, I can actually draw quite a bit of stuff right away. So I've got my line tool. I know that it goes from here to there. Okay, I know. Looks like that's dashed. I've still got it set as dashed. Sorry. Properties. Change that back to by layer. Not sure why I had that changed on my O layer, but there we go. So I'll just redo that one. Double check. I want that to be by layer. Okay. Draw this here. So it went from there to there. And the same thing on the very bottom. There. And I can also draw that center feature because my construction lines from my front view are already in place. So I don't need to redraw those. And because I made them X lines or infinite construction lines, everything is all lined up perfectly on the top. All right, I'm just going to turn off the couple of con lines I have right now just to indicate what I've drawn so far. So for the top view, I had to figure out where this was going to be. So that line represents the back of the object, right? Front of the object, back of the object. And then I already knew where these lines were because I had them from my front view. What I don't have right now is that little gap. So if I'm looking at the top, I'm not sure how to draw those little things yet, but it's easy to find out. The gap here, it's 11 from the back of the object to that first gap and from here to here. So it's 11, and then it's 28 in the middle. So 11 plus 28 plus 11 equals 50. So now I can just offset a couple of lines, and we're good to go. All right, so I need to offset a line that goes in 10, and I need to offset this line so it goes down 11. I don't actually need to draw another construction line for the 10 in because I already drew it right here. So it's easy for me to just draw any sort of con line. I'm not going to make it an infinite con line. I'm just going to use the line tool, and I'm going to go from here straight up. And I'm also going to do the same thing on the other side because I'm confident in that measurement. Don't get that measurement confused with the 11 measurement. Remember, you're looking at a different view. So what I just drew the red lines for, that represents the 10 in on the front side, not the 11 in going from front to back. So this is 11, 28, 11. That's what I need to deal with on the top view. So if I'm looking straight down, what that is this line and this line offset 11. So I'm going to offset 11 from the bottom of the top view and from the back of the top view. So now that's given me that gap, and you can see where the slot's going to be, the combination of the blue lines and the red lines. So if I flick back to my object layer, I can draw those in now. So I can go down to here, over, down to here, over. There you go. And now I can do the same thing on the other side. Theoretically, you could mirror it if you want. You can copy and rotate. Sometimes it's easier just to use the line tool and connect the dots. All right, so let's just hide our con layers for a second here. So there's my con layers hidden. Now I've got the top view. Now notice that this slot is perfectly cut out of the top view, and you cannot see it in the front view, but you know it's there because the hidden line, which helped us find that particular line. Same thing over here. That's all we can see on the top version. That version should be complete. Okay, if I'm looking at this from the top, I see straight through to the ground. I see this face, this face, this face, straight through to the ground. So if I'm looking up here, straight through to the ground, top, middle gap, back up to the top, and then straight through to the ground. That looks good. Now I just need to focus on what would the end view look like. The end view allows us to use something known as a miter line. A miter is just a 45-degree angle. It's important where you set this miter line, though. we've already indicated that this blue line is going to be used as the far left side when we draw this end view. Okay? Now we can use a 45-degree line to help us with all of the other lines that we need. I'm just going to change the color of these two. I'm going to change those to layer, let's call it layer 3 right now, just so that I don't get them mixed up with my blues. What we need to do in order to draw the end view, and it's very important you place this in the correct spot, what you need to do is you need to draw a 45-degree line from this point here through that point. So from the top right corner of your object, wherever those two lines are, through the gap. So our gap is here, our space between drawings. So our line has to go through that, and then it goes wherever it wants as long as it's at 45-degree angle. So I'm going to draw this one in, I'm going to draw it in, what haven't I used? I haven't used red a lot. I'm going to use red. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take my regular line tool. I don't want it to be an X line because I don't want it to go all the way through my drawing down there. I'm going to start here, okay, and I'm going to go through that at a 45-degree angle, and it should be 45 already because this gap is the same, right? It's 20 this way and 20 this way, which means this is square, which means it should go right through that. But I'm going to go further, right? It needs to be a 45-degree angle, and it needs to go at least past that blue line. Okay. So it looks like we're getting a whole lot of construction lines. Just remember where our object lines are right now. Our object lines are, okay, you can see our object lines. Now we can turn our construction lines on and off to help us with the end view. So with the end view, what you're really doing with this miter line is you're bouncing horizontal lines from the top view down to the end view. And you can also go the other way. You could also go from the end view, bounce up and across. So you're just basically turning horizontal lines into vertical lines to keep the measurements. What am I going to need lines for? Okay, I have this wall already because that's the blue line. So if I turn the blue con right on, again, you see it goes to the red line, it goes straight down. So this represents, okay, the very end of this object, and I basically find all the stuff moving from this line toward the right. The entire width of the object is represented by these two lines, right? If we're looking at it from the top view, this is the front of the object, this is the back of the object, so the distance between the front and the back is going to give us, right, the distance between this face and the back face that we can't see. That's the depth measurement, which is 50. So it needs to be 50 from this line, but I don't need to measure it. I already have it. It's where this top line hits the miter line, so I just have to draw that down now. So I would go to my con 5, grab the blue line, and I don't need to make a full X line for this one. I can just make sure I get to the right point on the red line and make sure it goes straight down and make sure it at least goes past the bottom of the object. Over here, I can find the bottom of the object by looking at a yellow line. So if I look at the yellow line, I already have that line. So this is where the ground hits that line. So I can draw a couple things already. If I go to my object layer and my line tool, I know already that I've got a line that goes from here to here to there, and all the way across the top. Okay, again, let's hide our con lines. Let's look at what we've got, what I've used to draw. So I've drawn the rough front shape, not front, sorry, end piece. So I'm looking at it from this way. Technically, it's this end, actually, but I'm looking at it from 90 degrees, and what I'm seeing is I can see a line all the way across, I can see a line all the way up, and I can see a line all the way across. So basically, I can see a box. There's a gap here. I just haven't drawn that gap yet because you're looking straight at it. You can't really tell that it's a gap from the front, from the end view, but you will see these lines here. Just like on the top view, we can't tell how far down this goes. When we're looking at it just from the top, we see three separate faces. We don't really know that this is cut out. That's what the front view is for. Okay, now these lines that we need right here to show this and this, we've already got them. Okay, we already have them from here, which means we can just bounce them straight down. So let's do that, and maybe I'll use red for this. I'm just trying to keep my drawing as clutter free as possible. I know that this one will line up with the one at the back, so that's no big deal. I just have to go over until I hit, make sure I'm at a 0 degree angle. If you go past, that's That's fine too. Just be sure you're on a 0 degree angle. And then from there, you need to go 90 degrees straight down. Okay? And then the same thing with the other one. Trace it, whoops. Trace it from that corner to your miter line and then bring it straight down. And then you see where those slots are for the gaps. So now I can go back to my white layer or my object layer and I can draw these two lines straight down. Those are not hidden lines, not on the end view or the right side view. You can actually see these lines, okay? Now they're hidden on the front view, but if you're looking at the object from the end, you can see this line and you can see that line. You can't see it if you're looking at it from here. You're looking at it from the front view. You know they're there, they're hidden. That's why it's a hidden line. But if you look at it from this way, you can see this line and you can see this line. So it's not a hidden line in this end view. However, what you can't see in the end view that you know exists is this gap. Okay, so there is a gap that cuts all the way through the object that represents this slot that goes through the middle of the object from front to back. You can't see that on this end view, but you know it exists, which means you should do it in a hidden line. So I could turn on all my yellows again because I've got a line for it right there on my yellows. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hide my yellows, and I'm going to do this one in con layer 4. And the reason I can do it is because I already know where it needs to go. It needs to go from here straight across. Okay. And that gives me the intersection where I can go to my hidden layer. Okay. And again, I said that line type 3 on this one was looking appropriate. So I will now use my line tool and I will start on that side and I will move across. Didn't quite make it all the way over. Just delete line, grab. So I'll start here and work my way across the object to the other side. Make sure it snaps appropriately. Great. And now I can turn off or hide that con layer 4 and I'm still seeing the hidden line. So now I've got that as a hidden line on my front view. So I can see the vertical slot. I can see the slot that's going up and down, okay, from the front. But I have to use a hidden line for that because I can't see through the wood or the metal or whatever this is, but I do know it's there. So I have no hidden lines on my top view. I've got these hidden lines on the front view, and I've got this hidden line to represent the slot on the end view. And that should be enough that we've actually represented every single visible line and feature on this object. And at this point, I just want to take a bunch of measurements to make sure that everything's right. For instance, I want to check and make sure if that distance was 20, if this middle distance was 40, if these end distances were appropriate as well. So I just go to annotate and start checking things. Is this 10 or 20? Vertical should be 20. Scroll out a little bit. There it is, 20. This one's supposed to be 40. This one should be 40 plus 44 is 84. That's all good. This should be, I believe, 11. This should be 10 from there to there. If I bring it vertically. This one here should be 10. It is. That gap should be 28. You know, so I'm just measuring a whole bunch of stuff. If you've got good construction lines and a good miter line, then there should be no reason for mistakes, because once you've got the front view or the top view, you can just go straight up and down. Then once you've got enough features on the top view, you can just go to your miter line and bounce it straight down. So in that you're using construction lines in 0 degree and 90 degree angles, you're much less likely to make a mistake on the end view. And on the top view, if you use existing construction lines. Instead of offsetting, where you might accidentally make a typo, you think you're supposed to offset 50, but you accidentally offset 60, you're less likely to make errors if you use the construction lines that you've already tested and that you already know are working. You're still going to have to offset lines, and I had to offset several lines, but I tried to use the existing construction lines as much as I could, just kind of hiding them as I work my way through the drawing to make it as uncluttered as possible. So that's a pretty good representation right there of the, the control bearing. And, again, as the very last step, In order to make this one just perfect, I would probably lock the hidden layer and the object layer, and then select my title block and scale my title block down. So SC, and then scale it from here. Scale that down from here just a bit. I'd probably eyeball this one, something like that's probably good. Turn everything back on, lock my title block, unhide everything else. And so then the last thing you do, obviously, is you could move the object, or you can move the title block, doesn't really matter, but just kind of get it in the center. And that's, that's good spacing right there. Maybe there's a little bit more on the left than I need. So move again, trying to have it, so more or less even gap between left and right and the top and for your title block section. So that's pretty good right there. It gives you a good representation. And if we move forward, or when we move forward and you get to pictorial views, you can even include a little pictorial view up there. And what might that look like? It would look like this. So you would bring this and you draw that up there, so you get an idea of what each face of the object looks like in 90-degree increments, as well as a more pictorial version of what this might from a specific angle.